Hey guys, I was asked recently to share my story about how I became in occupational therapy or like how I got interested in occupational therapy. So that's what I thought I'd do today. I actually did not know about occupational therapy until after I'd graduated from undergrad. I never heard of it. I didn't know anyone that was an occupational therapist. I'm originally from California, and I don't think that occupational therapy is nearly as big in California, or at least where I grew up, as it is in other parts of the country. So literally, I'd never heard of it, didn't know anything. And when I went to Shadow later on, I found out there's like maybe 6 occupational therapists in my whole like city. So that probably is part of why I never heard of it. So anyways, that's just a side note. But yeah, so I never heard of it. I didn't know any idea what it was. But after college, I knew that I wanted to volunteer. So after college, I ended up working with an organization that takes care of foster children. And so I volunteered with them and basically took care of foster kids for about 7 months. So taking them to their doctor's appointments. Basically, I just lived in the house with them. So hanging out with them, playing with them, feeding them breakfast and lunch and dinner and all sorts of things that you do with a normal child. I did that. It wasn't just me. I had a bunch of other great volunteers that were my age that were in the household as well, and we all worked together and just sort of like took care of these kids and learned a ton. But one of the things that was really cool about the whole experience is that I was able to, or kind of had to because of regulations by the organization, I had to sit in on a bunch of therapy sessions because a lot of the children that we had received therapy services. So I was able to see speech and PT and OT and able to just sit in on their sessions and see what that was like. And might remind you, like I had never seen occupational therapy at this point in time at all. But a couple of my kids had speech, a couple had like PT, OT, and so I really got to see firsthand what that looked like in pediatric setting. This would have been like early intervention setting, just so you're aware. And it was so cool. Like obviously I saw it not from the therapy perspective, but more from a caregiver perspective. But it was really cool to be able to sit in on a session and see what sort of things they were doing. And I always thought that was really interesting and would try and ask them like, oh, why are you doing this? But more than that, I really got to see like these kids and how much they improved from therapy and how much they grew and how much more they were capable of doing. And then on top of that, what was really cool is we had some great therapists that would then provide us with knowledge and educate us so that we could become a part of that process and a part of really helping them grow and develop. And I just thought that that was so cool. I was able to see one of like the kids that I really took care of. He went through pretty intensive therapy, and just to see his transformation and see how much more independent he became was amazing. Like he went from hardly being able to do anything, and everyone was saying that, you know, they didn't really expect much from him in his life, to well, now he's older and doing a lot more things. And I think a lot of that had to do with just like a nurturing environment and therapy and the therapist teaching and educating us, and then now his family on sort of what to work on and how to keep going. And now he's way significantly more independent. And so anyway, I don't know. I just think it's really cool to see just how, like, what an impact therapy can have on someone's life. And it's not that the therapist is doing anything. It's like the therapist is empowering that person. So the therapist is sort of like empowering the child and giving them the tools and the skill, like helping them develop the skills to become independent and to do things on their own. And I just thought that was so cool. Like I love the fact that it's more of an empowerment than a like, I'm going to do this for you. It's like, I'm going to help you do this for yourself. I just think that's awesome. I love that. That is one of my favorite things. And then I really loved how they just helped us as caregivers know what to do, because I think to some extent we just were a little like, not that we were completely lost, but we didn't know how to help this child or other children sort of be their full potential. And so sort of being educated on what things we could do to help him grow and get better was so cool. So anyways, that's my rant. So I got to see occupational therapy really up close firsthand, and that's where I first was like, oh, that's really cool. I really like it. But then I moved on and I did other things. And I had it just brought up to me a couple more times, like, oh, you should look into occupational therapy. It's a really great career. And so it sort of ended up being in the back of my mind. Like, I had multiple people mention it to me later on. And so I just started thinking about it and like, I don't know, like, because I didn't really have a life path, I guess, at that point. I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do and where I was going and all those overwhelming details. And so I started to actually seriously look into it because I remembered what a great experience I had with it before, but I never really sort of thought of myself as doing occupational therapy. And so after a couple of people sort of put it in my head, I started actually like really looking into it and really considering it. And I just remembered how much I really liked it and how cool I thought it was, and how, I don't know, I just think it's so empowering, and you get to problem solve, and you get to like have an impact on people, but it's not because of it's not because you're doing something for them, it's because you're helping them do things for themselves. I just think that's really cool. And so I started looking into it, and I realized, after I was able to shadow a lot more, I did a couple hours at like a sniff, and by a couple I mean like 100. So I was able to like shadow and really just look into it a lot more, and saw it in a couple different settings, and I realized that I just think occupational therapy is awesome. I definitely know that this is like the right career for me, if you know what I mean. And so yeah, essentially I had this kind of convoluted path into how I figured out occupational therapy, that happened way later than a lot of people, because I didn't even know about it in undergrad. And so it wasn't until after that I really started looking into it and learning about it and finding out about it. But overall, I am really, really happy with my decision to be in occupational therapy school. I definitely feel like occupational therapy for me is exactly where I want to be. I just love being able to work with someone to figure out how they can be independent, and how they can sort of help themselves. And I love like that whole being able to empower someone to do things for themselves. I don't know. I just think it's really cool. I love it. And so that's what I have to say on that. So basically that's how I learned about occupational therapy, and that's how I decided that I wanted to be an occupational therapist. So if anyone has other awesome stories, I would love to hear how you got interested in occupational therapy and sort of what your journey has been. So go ahead and share them in the comments below. Bye!